It's not a bike for me. Why? Too much fun. Because of the Acropolis? No, because of the rally mode and ABS supermoto mode. Yeah. Hi, it's me, Andrzej. And this is the very bad new KTM 1290 Super Adventure S. I know it doesn't look entirely like a new motorcycle, because it's very similar to the previous one, but you should know that 90% of the parts are new. And yesterday, during the technical presentation, at some points, my brain was practically boiling from the overload of information because there are so many changes in this motorcycle. If I miss anything now during the video, remember that everything will be described in issue number 3 of the year 2021. In Shuyat Motorcycle, of course. Why is this a bad motorcycle? Because it's terrible to ride. It's terribly good to ride, and it desperately wants to ride well. It's very hard to hold yourself back from riding it the way the law and common sense dictate. So I won't hide the fact that today, when we were riding on empty roads or closed ones, because, for example, we had photo shoots. Remember that what you see in the photos is always on closed sections of road, secured and safe. So I did it because this motorcycle wanted to do it, and also to show what this motorcycle is capable of. Chris Mook says something very interesting, that motorcycles are often bought with emotions, and it's not about the fact that each of us will soon be riding this motorcycle in a controlled rear wheel slide at 180 kilometers per hour, doing wheelies, whatever, just because. But the awareness that this motorcycle is capable of that is very satisfying. But let's go back to the beginning and to the changes. You should know this. The frame is new, the engine has been improved, the fuel tank and the fairings are completely new. The geometry is new in this motorcycle, and that really makes a difference. The race for maximum power, in my opinion, is already coming to an end. 160 horsepower in this motorcycle is really enough, and I spoke with the engineers today. They're no longer chasing higher maximum power. They're more likely to look for even more torque, because right now it's at 138 Newton meters and it pulls like crazy. And thanks to the fact that it pulls so well already in the low and mid rev range, we rarely even venture into the area where maximum power occurs. Interestingly, even though the engine has the same power, it has still undergone a number of modifications. For example, the engine block hole, the walls are thinner, which saved as much as 1 kilogram of weight. Also, the oil channels no longer run inside as channels in the block, but are now simply separate aluminum tubes. Similarly, the new fairings are designed to be lighter, yet in the end, the motorcycle is not actually lighter than its predecessor. Why is that? Because this whole pursuit of reducing weight is meant to ensure that the motorcycle doesn't become even heavier. That's because we have new equipment on board. We have new emission standards, which make motorcycles heavier. And this effort to reduce weight is really just to keep the weight in check. So the engine and performance haven't changed. There are new, even lighter pistons. The gearbox is a major change. The gearbox in this motorcycle, I've already written about this, is produced by Pank, a highly specialized company that manufactures top-tier parts from various alloys. For example, they make components for Formula 1 and racing engines, such as connecting rods. I remember, for example, that for the Panigale, it was something like 8,000 euros for 2 of them. 2 connecting rods or something like that. Or was it 8,000 zlotys? Well, it doesn't matter in any case. It's a crazy amount of money. So they are responsible for the gearbox. And in my opinion, it's the best gearbox you can currently find in motorcycles. It works so fast, so smoothly, so precisely that it's almost unbelievable. Remember, there's also a quick shifter both up and down, so shifting gears is just completely absurd. I'm curious how this will affect the lifespan of such a gearbox. Because, for example, the shift drum is now made of aluminum, and the quick shifter means we're shifting gears without the clutch, so those shift forks are just moving around in there. I don't know. Yeah. We'll see. The thing is, KTM focuses, they have that ready to race slogan, and they always concentrate on making the motorcycle perform as well as possible, to ride as well as possible. But how long will it last? I don't know, really. Time will tell. When we buy this motorcycle, we have a warranty anyway, so you just have to start riding it right away to check how everything works. As for the engine, that's more or less it. For example, there's a new airbox. And what's interesting is that to replace the air filter, you only need to unscrew 4 screws. This has been made much easier, and it's really a nod towards making motorcycle maintenance simpler. Even though the service interval is 15,000 kilometers, and theoretically you can ride 15,000 on a single oil change, I would change it more often, and the replacement is extremely simple because the filter is right on top of everything on this motorcycle. It's basically right out in the open. This kind of approach is really very race oriented, allowing you to service the motorcycle very quickly. A small detail like this additional chain holder, for example, when you remove the wheel, you have this extra holder, and then there's a guard where you can check if your chain is properly tensioned. You know, these are the kinds of small or very clever things that ultimately make life easier. As for the frame, it has been shortened by 15 millimeters at the front. The steering head angle is sharper, and at first I thought, wow, this motorcycle turns even better than the previous one. We're sitting closer to the wheel, automatically putting more weight on it. The motorcycle is more agile, but I was worried that this would result in less stability in fast corners. But it turns out that's not the case, because at the same time, the swing arm has been lengthened. So in reality, the wheelbase under us has been maintained and simply shifted backward, you could say, to put it simply, while we remain in the middle, meaning the weight is a bit more toward the front. At the same time, the engine has been rotated a bit, and the difference is, you know, I had to ride one and then the other right after, but the fact is that this motorcycle just turns so well. It's so easy to flick it through corners that you don't feel at all like you're riding a machine that weighs over 250 kilograms. The fuel tank also plays a role in this because, as you might remember, the tank was 990. It had 2 fillers because there was a tank on the right and on the left. Here, it's actually similar because there's a right tank and a left tank. They go quite deep here, though not all the way here, because this is just the kind of cover. They go quite low, and we have 10 liters on one side, 10 liters on the right, and on top I think 3 liters, if I remember correctly. So this automatically lowers the center of gravity and makes the motorcycle very eager to change direction. What I think is a huge plus is the suspension. This is the first version of the WP semi-active suspension. I always wrote that it was supposedly fine, but not entirely. There were these kinds of valves that, for example, when we were riding slowly and pressed the brake, all we could hear was click, 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 click. It was really, really annoying. The new version has magnetic valves that are lighter, have fewer parts, and there's less chance that something will break. Honestly, it's just out of this world, because you don't feel the suspension working at all. And that's exactly how good semi-active suspension should be. You simply don't notice them working. You just feel that the motorcycle is glued to the asphalt at all times, in every moment. Of course, here in Fuerteventura, it's amazing. The asphalt is very grippy, and surprisingly, the tires held up well. I'm jumping around a bit here, but as you can see, there are just so many things to talk about. The tires are Mitas, and my first question was, how is it possible that you put Mitas tires on a motorcycle like this? And I was told that it was the best choice, that they had tested the whole range of tires, and this really turned out to be an excellent choice, because Mitas wants to enter the adventure segment, and they put a lot of work into it and developed this tire specifically for this motorcycle. And you can really believe them, because listen, there would be nothing worse than building a completely new motorcycle and putting bad tires on it, because we know that would completely ruin the effect. So the grip on this motorcycle is incredible. I already had the impression that it's no longer like it used to be, where you enter a corner and think, okay, will the front hold, will the rear hold? But now you just think, how fast can I take this corner? You try to go through one corner after another, faster and faster each time. You can't believe it's actually working. You lean the bike in and you don't even care whether the tires will grip or not, whether the front will give out or not. Well, you know, you do care, but that limit is so far, far, far away from where we are, because we have, you know, cornering ABS, a new traction control system that actually uses that 6-axis sensor, but at the same time there are new sensors, for example, ones that measure the suspension travel, which take some of the load off the 6-axis sensor so that the motorcycle can adapt even better to what's happening. For example, the rotational speed of the rear wheel is managed separately, and the lean angle of the rear wheel relative to the front is also managed separately. So it might turn out that the motorcycle, you know, goes into a controlled slide, spinning the wheel as it exits the corner. Of course, it will be much easier to feel this on gravel than on asphalt. Well, the asphalt just has to be less grippy, because here, when you give it gas, it takes off like crazy. Fortunately, when it comes to all this electronics, we can operate it much more easily now, because there's a new screen, and this screen is finally logical. Actually, the menu is logical, because up until now with KTM, you would change things and you kind of knew what you were changing, but not really. And every time you turned off the motorcycle, everything would reset. Now everything is done with icons. So much so that even if the menu is in a foreign language, I even had it in Spanish, I was still able to change the settings. Because everything is pictorial, everything is crystal clear, almost painfully so. As for the settings, the active cruise control settings are particularly interesting. You can see that ugly element at the front. The active cruise control is there to help you keep your driver's license and avoid getting fined. Seriously, I trust these devices because I use one in my car. And I just knew that if they're making something like this, it has to work. 35,000 man-hours were spent developing the radar together with Bosch. 4,500 parameters were set to make this radar work. So in practice, we were driving in a convoy. You know, it kind of felt like a road trip vibe. We were driving in a convoy through small towns, and I turned on the active cruise control. The motorcycle maintained its distance. I was just calm, knowing I wasn't exceeding the speed limit and so on. Importantly, for example, when we were in a tight turn and the motorcycle in front of us disappeared from view, I was worried that my bike would suddenly surge forward, that it would accelerate really hard. But no, it also has a lean sensor. So when we leaned over, the motorcycle won't suddenly start accelerating. It just works in such a way that you really have to try it for yourself. And I think that anyone who tries it, especially on highways, you know, in those places where it's boring, where there's nothing to do, you just turn it on and ride along. Today, I turned it on so I wouldn't do anything stupid. Because the truth is, if you turn off various systems on this motorcycle, for example, if you switch to rally mode, of course that's optional. I'll describe in the article what packages are available because there really are a lot of them. When you switch to rally mode, traction control is still active, but it doesn't interfere too much when it comes to lifting the front wheel. Or you can also turn off traction control completely, and then you have full control yourself. So I tried doing a launch like that, starting from first gear, and up until third gear, I just couldn't keep the front wheel on the ground. So in the end, I had to close the throttle, which meant I was losing acceleration. So this is a motorcycle worthy of being called a KTM. It's just that wild. Seriously, even in third gear, when you open the throttle, it lifts the front wheel. If you want to pop a wheelie in fourth gear, all you have to do is snap the clutch, but at the same time, it's so easy to control. It's so precise when it comes to throttle response. The components in the engine are so light. They don't jerk, they don't interfere with what you're doing, so you can ride and pull wheelies really fast. But at the same time, you can do slow wheelies if you know how, and it just does all of that effortlessly. It's the same with cornering, with sliding. If you know how, it will just do it. That's why, in my opinion, anyone who buys this motorcycle should take it to the track to really learn how to handle it. And honestly, it's best to just keep it on the track with this bike. Oh, I don't know, just because it's just absurd. Simply put, how does this motorcycle ride? How does it actually perform? The same goes for the brakes, everything. Absolutely everything works brilliantly. It's really hard to find any real downsides. Even before, I could complain that these motorcycles would get terribly hot, but this one might actually run cooler because now instead of one radiator, there are two, and they're positioned at such an angle that there are outlets here. So the hot air from the radiator doesn't blow toward us anymore, it's expelled outward. So today that wasn't an issue since it was around 20, maybe a bit over 20 degrees in the sun. So we'll see how it performs during a real heat wave. But maybe, just maybe, they finally managed to solve the problem of cooking the male and female regions on the motorcycle. It's really hard to find any real downsides. You could nitpick about the plastics, but the windshield adjustment works very easily. You can do it with your right hand, your left hand, either way. Well, this plastic isn't the most beautiful. We'll see what it looks like after a few years. The sound, I said that I would like to have more sound because honestly the exhaust is so muffled it doesn't sound at all since there are noise limits. This is a homologated exhaust, and it turned out that even the airbox has to be silenced because I said, listen, it would be nice to have that deep, throaty sound from the airbox. But no, the airbox can make just as much noise as the muffler, and that's why what you actually hear is really only the mechanical sound of the engine itself. Well, I've heard better sounds in my life. Vibrations? Yeah, there are vibrations, you can get used to them, but you know, that's kind of nitpicking, looking for negatives a bit on purpose. Every motorcycle, especially a big V-twin that's this tuned, is going to vibrate. And the rest, well, the seats. Now we can choose from 11 different seats. The seat itself is lower, the subframe is different so that more people can ride it. The foot pegs are adjustable, you can rotate them, they can be lower or higher. Everything is designed for the customers to make it as easy as possible for them. And the storage compartment, well, the storage compartment, finally the storage compartment is back, just like we had in the 990. Here, at last, there's also a storage compartment, proximity key with some new anti-theft systems. Oh, there's a downside because there's an app, there's navigation, but we can't upload our own external maps there. For example, if we wanted to go on the TET, maybe not with this one, but with the R version, which is coming soon, we'd like to go on the TET, or we have some routes planned, we download them from the internet. We can't upload them to this app. We have to set up the route point by point within the app. See, we found a downside. The motorcycle doesn't even use that much fuel because we rode in all sorts of ways. Today, I think at the end it came out to 5.9 or 6.7. Sorry, I don't remember. I'll check it again and write about it in the magazine, so it really doesn't use that much fuel. This job sucks. It just rides well, it's great, it's wild, and we can do anything. But if you don't want to do everything, at the same time, it's a very pleasant and gentle motorcycle. All you have to do is set it to the milder modes, and it's idiot-proof. We just ride it soft, smooth, comfortable, and cozy. We can set the suspension to automatic mode, so we don't even have to adjust it ourselves. The system reacts based on the throttle or brakes. Depending on how fast we're going, it either stiffens or softens. And if we want to experiment, we have the advanced mode, where we can adjust the fork and the rear separately. The rear can actually be raised or lowered when we set the preload, so the motorcycle can be lowered by several more millimeters, but it can also do this automatically. 21st century. KTM 1290 Super Adventure S, a skinned beast. It's incredibly good. I can't wait for the comparison tests because we won't be able to, I'll tell you right now, we won't be able to say whether this motorcycle is better than the GS or better than the Multistrada. These motorcycles are already at such a level that all we can do is show what each one is suited for, where the strengths of one are and where the strengths of the other are. It's out of this world, out of this world. If you don't believe me, then try taking a ride yourself. There are supposed to be, some tours, some events, something like that. But, oh, look, I see a sticker coming off here. Oh no, that's not a sticker. What is that? It's already gone. That wasn't an original sticker. It's not on this side. Take care and best regards to all of you.